Welcome to Journey In, a show that aims to offer you new and expanding perspectives when it comes to defining your spirituality. These days, more and more of us are craving a deeper connection to something bigger than ourselves. I created this show to not only share about my personal journey, but to create a space to have conscious conversation around different spiritual modalities, health and wellness trends, and to hear from spiritual thought leaders so that we can come together and respect one another despite our spiritual beliefs and differences. At the end of the day, a spiritual journey is a homecoming to who you really are, and you get to define what that path looks like. It can be messy, hard, and confusing. We're going to journey through it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm your host, Jess, and let's journey in. Welcome back to the pod. It has been a hectic start to 2025. I was almost going to say 2024, but Happy New Year. My partner and I traveled back to Arizona. That's where my parents and my brother actually live. So we went and spent New Year's there. And we also went to a rave, which was 2 days, which I'm like, damn, I feel like I am getting so old, but it was so fun. And then we came home and we got hit with the flu. And so my boyfriend got it first. Well, we actually think it was norovirus because we tested for COVID and influenza A and B, and all of it came back negative. And apparently that's going around right now. So, anyways, my boyfriend got hit with it first, pretty much right after the rave, as well as multiple other people in our group that we were with. So it was definitely from there. And I thought I was in the clear, but then like 5 days later, all of a sudden I wake up and I am unwell. So I'm still kind of on the up and up from that. I'm not going to lie, but yeah, I've been in bed for pretty much all of 2025 so far. And I mean, I'm recording this in the first week of January, so it's fine, but it's just like such a reminder for me of how hard it is sometimes to slow down, even when your body is on its deathbed. So, anyways, it's been a little rough, but we're here. We made it. So, I was thinking about, okay, what do I want? This year has been 2024, I should say, last year. It has been it was tough for me. I'm not going to lie. And so I kind of want to just do like a reflection episode on 2024, what that looked like, and go from there. So, I really, just to be like completely honest, because I've just been struggling with like, how do I even show up on my podcast? Because I've just been moving through it. And my spiritual mentor, Carly, she was just like, just be real and just like talk about what you're going through and what you're moving through. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. So we're doing audio only today too, because I'm just, again, still on the up and up from what I think was norovirus. But anyways, so here we are. So 2024 was a year of, gosh, like I want to say like massive, massive healing and hibernation for me. But it was also a really challenging year for my mental health. And I think that that is something I haven't really talked about much openly, but I feel like a lot of people can probably relate to it. Because, I have just been feeling so lost in terms of like what to do with my career. And back in, I met my partner back in 2022. And at that time, I was running my own health coaching business and I was really struggling to make ends meet. Like I had just, was I went back to school for holistic nutrition and I'm learning a lot right now about the art of discernment in a container that I'm in. And I'm just like reflecting on decisions that I made and how I followed my intuition. And, following your intuition is one thing, but having discernment of how to do it is another. And so one of my mentors has been teaching on this, and I've just been really reflecting on it because when I was 25, I quit my corporate job and I went back to school for holistic nutrition. And that was so led by not only my intuition, but like my passion. I was so unbelievably passionate about it. And it just like lit me up and I couldn't get enough of it. And so I just I had originally planned to keep my corporate job. I was working full time at a hotel at the time in management. So it was pretty demanding. I was working like 55 hours a week. And I think I was like a month into my program, my nutrition program, and I was just like, I can't do this. I can't work full time and go to school like 20, 25 hours a week. This is too much. And so, I decided to get a part time job, move back in with my parents. And it really did not serve me. And I just did not think it through. And I did not strategize or plan with my money, with my savings. I went from making great money at a corporate job that I was really comfortable and used to making for over 3 years at that point, to then I took a desk job at a Pilates studio and I was making like $15 an hour. And I was only working part-time as well. And so that was really the start of like my struggle with my career and with money. And prior to that, I was doing so well in my corporate job financially, but I was really unhappy. But I do think that I could have been like in reflecting back, I had money saved. I could have been so much more strategic about it. And also, I just wasn't really aware of the types of jobs that were available at the time. Um, and this was also before the pandemic, so remote work wasn't as prominent either. So, got to give myself grace there a little bit. But just giving some context of just where my struggles with my mental health really began. And even though I was following this path, I was so passionate. I mean, what was really getting me through, even the financial hardship and the challenges of, moving back home, living with family again, what was getting me through were like my passions for nutrition and at the time yoga, because I was like in my peak of my yoga teaching. And that was really fueling me as well. And so then, fast forward a few years into it, I had finished my nutrition certification at school. And I did not really evaluate like, what are my job options here? What can I do with this degree? I was just so consumed with my passion, which I think is really beautiful. But I do think that there is, when you make a really big decision like that, especially like, I had to take out a loan to go back, and I don't regret it by any means, but just reflecting back, I'm like, okay, I wish I would have evaluated what my job options were so that I could have been more strategic in like what I did afterwards and what types of jobs I was applying for, because there were basically no jobs. There were no health coaching jobs at the time, and if there were, they were paying like $20 an hour. It was crazy. Anyways, I ended up finding a job at a medical weight loss clinic as a nutrition counselor. And again, the money was just like, it was so horrible. It was $15 an hour, and I had to negotiate up to $18 an hour. And this was a full-time job, you guys. And I didn't know what else to do, so I just took the job. And I only worked there for a year because I was so overworked. The hours were like grueling. The schedule was it was really ridiculous. But I was working a full-time job and making what is that? Like $30,000 a year. And so I was exhausted and I was working my ass off. And I was like, this is just not what what I thought I signed up for. And so anyways, that's when I made the decision to decide to leave that job and open my own health coaching business, because I couldn't find any opportunities that really aligned with like what I wanted to do first and foremost, with like a really holistic approach to nutrition and mindfulness. But also, to be completely honest, there was nothing that was going to pay me what I could live off of. And so that was a really big lesson for me. And there were a bunch of lessons within that as well. So then I started serving part time, opened my own health coaching business, had no idea what I was doing. Just went for it. And by that point, I was already so burnt out. Like, I was so burnt out. My nervous system was fried, especially from having already been in financial hardship for, I think, at least like 2 or 3 years at that point. And yeah, then I met my partner and my current partner. And well, I went through a lot of change at the time, personally through that. But fast forward to meeting my partner in 2022. Um, he just like saw me, and I thought I was hiding it well. Okay. I was like, yeah, I run my own business, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, I had like 2 clients, was struggling to make ends meet, but I did not want to give up hope. But I was so burnt out that I like did not have the capacity to even think about like how I could move forward. And at that point, all I could think about was like, how am I going to support myself? And it really took away, how am I serving people and how can I help people, because I was so focused on my survival. And so I think that that's really important. Like, if you are someone who is in a corporate job or you want to open your own business, like really setting yourself up and being like strategic with money is so important. I know there's so much messaging about like just take the leap, especially in the spiritual space. But you also have to be smart, and you have to like understand how to, like, we're human beings. We have to understand how to be in this like material world. And I just think that that's a huge lesson that I really learned the hard way. Um, and I'm still recovering from it, to be completely honest. So, and this was really, again, the start of like the mental health deterioration. And I didn't realize it at the time because I was just like stuck in fight or flight. And then when I met my partner, I had actually booked a trip to go to San Diego. And you guys are like, why are you booking a trip to San Diego when you had no money? Yeah, good question. I actually was using this website called Trusted House Sitters, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's actually a really amazing resource if you want to travel on a budget and if you like animals. Because basically you can go like pretty much anywhere in the world, and you can pet sit for people and stay at their house for free. And in exchange, like, they offer you their home for free, and you offer to take care of their pets for free. So it's an exchange, right? But it really is so amazing if you want to travel on a budget and if you like animals. And so for me at the time, I was like, this is so perfect, because I was also, when I booked the trip, I was single. And, traveling as a single woman, I just prefer if like having animals in the house, especially dogs. And so I was like, this is so great. So, anyways, booked a trip to San Diego through that. And then I met my partner. And the reason why I had booked the trip to San Diego was because I was really planning on moving out of Arizona, and San Diego was like my top contender, and I was going to try to get a job out there and do what I needed to make it work. And then my partner was like, we had been dating for like a few weeks, and I was about to leave one morning for San Diego, and I just like started crying. And when I say crying, I mean I had a full on meltdown in front of him. This beautiful man who I had only been dating for a few weeks at the time. And I just like lost it and told him everything about how much I was struggling financially. And he was just like, I know. And I was like, what do you mean you know? And he was like, yeah, it's like very obvious that you're struggling with money. And I was just like, okay, so that's great. But anyways, he still loved me anyways. Um, and he really met me with like just so much love in that moment, and he just held me, and he told me it was going to be okay, and like he offered to help me. And that was not what I was looking for. It's not what I was expecting. And um I was like, no, 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 no. Absolutely not. Like, I'm an independent woman. I am not going to accept any type of help from a man. I have to. And at this time, I really, really realized, because it took me so long to finally just like accept the support that was being given to me and being offered to me. But I realized that like I did not feel worthy of love because I was struggling so much financially. And that was a really big block for me. Even when I met my partner, like I remember I was in such a like boss babe business mode. Like all I cared about and all I thought about was my business and like how to make money. And part of that was survival, but and conditioning. But like a relationship was literally the last thing on my mind. And at that point, I had only been in toxic relationships. And so I was just like, I need to figure myself out. I need to figure my career out before I can be in a loving partnership. But the universe had other plans for me. And I found my loving partnership first. And I really realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I like did not feel worthy of being loved, like because I didn't have money, which is just really sad when you really think about it. And this is a really vulnerable thing for me to talk about. I don't think that, but I think it's important because I think as women, what I've been learning so much is in the past few years of like being supported by a man who just like loves me and wants me to be happy, is just like I've just really gotten to see how much our society has like conditioned us as women to be too much in our masculine and to push men away and to like villainize men and to make them the bad guys. And I'm not saying that like all men are great. I mean, I've had men do some really fucked up shit to me, but I've also done fucked up shit to them. Like, hello, toxic relationship 101. You bring out the worst in each other. Um, but I really do think like I've just been learning so much through my partnership. And it has not been easy because it's been like really confronting for me. And I've really had to just like let go and like learn how to be supported. And that's been really, really hard. You would think it'd be easy. Like, oh, a man that you love so much is like coming into your life, supporting you, then you can figure your life out, whatever. Well, once that happened, I decided to let go of my business completely for a little bit because I couldn't even think at that point. And in the midst of letting that go, my podcast was born. So that was a really beautiful thing. But I also did not realize like how much I was in fight or flight. Like I had no idea. And so once the stress about money like went away, of literally the stress of like how am I going to like pay for my groceries, like it was that bad. Once that was like my survival was like okay, I'm good. My nervous system was able to like calm down. And then I was sleeping like 11, 12 hours a night. And my partner was like, "Are you okay?" And I was just like, "I don't know. Like I'm so tired." And we've been together for 2.5 years now. And he always is like, "Babe, you've been tired since I met you." And I'm just like, "Yep." Because unfortunately for him, he met me when I was in the peak of my fight or flight, stressed out, quote unquote, air quotes, boss babe mode. Anyways, so it's really like these past 2 years have just been like a really immense healing journey for me. And 2024 has been, I feel like 2023 was really like the unraveling of my nervous system and sleeping all the time and just like coming back into my body. Oh my gosh. And then 2024 was like the deep work, like the deep, deep, deep fucking work. And in the midst of all of this, like, I feel like I completely lost myself and lost my identity because, as I mentioned before, like, when the financial hardship started for me, what was getting me through were like my passions with nutrition and teaching yoga. But that just like those passions just like went away because I was so burnt out. And so I didn't have like what really was lighting me up still was my spirit, and still does, is my spirituality. But those passions that I had like been able to turn into work just diminished. Like they just went away. And so amidst all of that, I just was having and have been having for the past few years just like a massive identity crisis of like, who am I? And like, what am I doing in this world? And like, what am I supposed to do here? And I went through a phase where I was really applying to full-time corporate jobs, and I actually almost got one as a marketing manager, and it would have been like full-time in office. And I was just like, I was doing it, but everything in my body like was telling me it wasn't the right path for me. And I was just doing it because of like the money, like I was like, I just need to figure out how to make money again. And that's been something that I've been really sitting with, is like, and that didn't work out for me. I didn't get the job. And so that's, you know, was a bummer, but also honestly, I was really relieved. And so, I just feel like so much of these past few years for me have been like kind of kicking and screaming and like being really like, what the fuck do I do? Because going back to a corporate job just feels, and I'm not saying that like you can't work a corporate job and be happy. I'm just saying that I just feel so intrinsically like I'm meant to do something different career-wise. And it's just been really, really hard. It's been really hard. And it's been really hard on my relationship because, there have been many times where I've like projected my confusion and my identity crisis onto the relationship. And, I've had to really be, luckily I have a partner who like doesn't tolerate that, and he has boundaries. Like he's a man, like he's like, this isn't okay. And he's like really helped reflect that back to me and help me see like, okay, this is my shit. Like, this is my shit. And it's just been really, really, really hard. And like, I've been really struggling with anxiety and depression all year throughout 2024. And what that has really led me to, and like, I'm still moving through it, to just be completely honest. But what that has really led me to do, I would say, is it's really led me to lean deeper into my spirituality in a way that I never have before. And also, 2024 was a massive year of growth for me as a partner. And I've learned so much about relationships through being in one. And so those I think are like my biggest takeaways from 2024. And also just really realizing, oh, there's so much that I want to say about this, but really realizing that I truly believe that every woman is so unique and so different in how they want to be and live this life when it comes to, whether that is being supported by a man or, and I mean financially supported, right? Or maybe, still having your own career to some capacity while still welcoming in that support. I think that for me, I've realized like I don't need to be this like boss babe, independent woman. I really just want to be able to like create and express myself. And like I would love for that to somehow be embedded in my career, because I've learned about myself that like expression is the number one thing that fulfills me. And that's why I have this podcast. Like I've literally thought, like, do I even want to have a podcast anymore? And the answer always comes back to yes. And I just have been, but I've just been really like moving through it and just like kicking and screaming and like really realizing where like I don't trust in God, and where I don't trust in God is where I don't trust in myself. And so that's been a really, really big thing that I've been learning. And I'm still learning to trust in myself. And a lot of the trust that I lost was from everything that I just explained, all the decisions that I made and feeling like I got myself into a really, really unfortunate situation that was really hard and stressful on me. So it's been a journey of just learning how to forgive myself, which I feel like I'm like learning self love and self compassion, and really coming into just acceptance of where I'm at. And I always think I've been really thinking so much about my life, and I'm like, how am I 32 and I still feel like I don't know what I want to do with my life? But then I also remind myself, like, you know what? I will figure it out, and at least I've learned what it means to love someone and how it feels to be loved unconditionally by someone, because that's something that my partner, he hates the word unconditional or the term unconditional love, but he really has shown me that. He has shown me that, like, I just my relationship has just been my biggest teacher in the past 2 years, and it has not been easy. I think I said that before. Um and I have a lot to say on relationships, honestly. I'll probably talk more about it, but I just think that relationships have the opportunity to really reflect to you what's going on. But you have to be willing to show up for it. And so for me, I've just been really learning, like, I am not someone, I feel like I've just been floating. I was so in my masculine, and then now I've been so like in my feminine of just like flowing, learning how to be, and tapping more into the stillness, which is definitely something that like I'm still learning to really adapt that as my way of being. But life has just really been asking me to slow the fuck down. And I'm still over here some days like, what am I doing with my life? I have to figure this out. Like, how am I going to make money? Like, all of these things, because there's just so much pressure, and also like from society, but then also it's like we live in a world where money is our currency. And so I'm still really in that. I'm still really figuring out, like, what is it that I want to do? But, and so I was like, I'm just going to show up, and that's on my podcast, and that's what I'm going to talk about. And I don't know if anybody can relate, but yeah, in the midst of it, my mental health has really been, it's been really bad. And there have been a lot of moments where I've really broken down, and I think, the people that are closest to me really know that. But I'm just sharing this because I feel like I'm not the only one going through this. And for me, what I've learned is to just like pour into myself in the ways that nourish me. And for me, that's been through my spirituality. So in 2024, I signed up to work with my spiritual mentor through a one-on-one container, Carly, who I'm going to have on the podcast soon. She is just so amazing. And we did a container that was it was a one-on-one. It's called Divine Artistry. And she just curates. It's such a curated experience. And that's when Mary Magdalene came through for me very strongly. And so, I have an episode about that, my spiritual awakening 2.0. So you can go back and listen to that. But Oh my God, that was like the biggest thing for me out of 2024 was learning about my connection to Mary Magdalene and how much that has influenced the way I approach my spirituality, because I was approaching it so much from an outside in, like oracle cards, astrology. And I still love astrology. Obviously, you guys know by now, 13 sign or true sky astrology is something that I'm still very passionate about. And I'm still going to talk about it every now and then. But where I'm really at right now is learning how to come back to myself as my guide and not rely so much on intuitives to like an intuitive, I really wanted to get a 2025 intuitive year ahead reading. Oh my God, you guys, I wanted it so bad. But I was like, no, I'm going to continue to focus on being present and tuning in to myself as my guide. And that is something that I'm still really learning to embody. And um, through this work that I did with Carly, I got to my deepest, deepest trauma that I didn't realize I was burying, that I didn't realize affected it impacted how my nervous system developed. It impacted literally like how my brain developed and my stress response developed. And I've always been a moody girl, very moody, intense mood swings. And I learned that, I actually, through doing all of this intense and deep work, I learned, like, I've always thought, like, what is wrong with me? Like, why? And that's been something that, like, my partner has reflected. Well, he hasn't been like, what's wrong with you? But he's been like, have you ever thought about like why you have such intense mood swings? And so for a while, I was like considering going to a therapist that like specializes in mood disorders, because him and I went to couples therapy for a little while, and like my therapist, our couples therapist was like, I think you should look into if you have a mood disorder because, you do have such drastic mood swings. And so I was about to do that. But then I ended up going the spiritual route, of course. And I'm so glad I did, because through that uncovering of really hitting like the deepest trauma that I've ever experienced, I learned that I developed complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And basically, what complex post traumatic stress disorder is, it's a mental health condition that can develop after having experienced a trauma for a prolonged period of time in your life. And it happens most often in children, but it can happen in adults as well. And a common symptom of it is really intense mood swings. And everything just like made sense. I was just like, oh my God, because I was moving through life. I was like, why do I get so angry? The anger that I was holding was like sadness, just because of what I had experienced. And so uncovering that was massive for me, like so, so, so massive. And over the holidays, like I feel like that was something that I really had to just like be there for myself. And it's so big that like I feel like I can't even put it into words. And what really made me realize just like how massive it was for me was, when I discovered what complex post-traumatic stress disorder was, and then also just I was putting everything together, because at the same time, like from different areas of my life, because at the same time I had started working with Carly, and I was telling her, I was like, my physical body is like, I can feel it like needs support. Like I can feel that I need something. Like there's something, it feels like physically on a physical level, there's something that's like I'm lacking something, or I'm needing some sort of like nutrient support. And so she referred me to a functional nutrition practitioner who is absolutely amazing and does muscle testing and works with a lot of different, really understands the body from a really holistic perspective, and is able to provide protocols and supplementation for what she muscle tests you for. And so I started working with her, And immediately, everything that I muscle tested for that needed support in my body was all around my HPA axis. And so the HPA axis is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So it involves your hypothalamus, your pituitary gland, and your adrenals. And I had muscle tested for all of that and already started supplements to support healing my adrenals and my pituitary gland in my brain. And then I discovered complex post traumatic stress disorder and was able to connect it to this trauma that I experienced. And I was just like, it was just this like, oh shit, holy shit, what the fuck? Wow, this has literally been impacting me on an emotional level, on a physical level, because the HPA axis is the system in the body that acts as the primary stress response system. And it's what regulates the release of hormones like cortisol. And it's what literally helps the body be able to cope with stressful situations. And so seeing this come up in all my muscle testing, it was just like, okay, this explains so much as to why I physically feel like I cannot control my emotions sometimes and why I get so moody. So just like putting all of that together was really mind blowing for me. And that's also what motivated me to give up coffee because 2024 was the year that I gave up coffee. And I actually got the intuitive hit that really from my body that I just needed to let coffee go back in January of 2024. And it was something that I often thought about, and I could feel it in my body because I just always had this like anxiousness physically. But I was so addicted to coffee, and I was so addicted to not only the ritual of it, of like in the morning, waking up, having something really yummy and warm to like kickstart my day and just get me going into that, like, that like kind of it gives you almost like a high of just like productivity. And I was so addicted to that as well, of just doing and going and never resting. And my adrenals were just fried because of it. And so really once I learned about how much physical support my body was asking for through the muscle testing, I was like, enough is enough. I have to give up coffee. And so it finally gave me, honestly, like the willpower to do it because I also love the flavor of coffee. I have emotional ties to coffee. I used to wake up in the morning and I would smell the smell of coffee before getting out of bed because my mom would have a pot on. And so it was like nostalgic for me and made me think of my mom and like so many things with coffee. And so it was really, really hard for me to give it up. And I know I am not alone in this, but I did. I gave it up and at first it was something that I thought about every single day. I had to really, really, really exert willpower not to cave in and just have some. So what I did is I got mud water. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with mud water, but it's a pretty popular coffee alternative. And it does not taste like coffee at all. It is very earthy, very chai flavored. It has adaptogens and, mushrooms. It's very healthy for you. Not the best flavor, if I'm being honest, but I started to use that in place of my morning coffee every single day. And it has like a little bit of caffeine, but not like literally a fraction of the caffeine compared to coffee. And so I started drinking that every morning, and that really did help me with the ritualistic aspect of it. It definitely was not like the flavor that I was desiring, or of course that like kickstart of, that the caffeine would give me. But I would say after about a month, I started to really notice like, okay, my body is starting to settle down physically. And I was waking up less anxious, and I started to feel it, and that made it easier to continue on. And now I honestly got really sick of the flavor, so I don't really drink it that much, the mud water. I tried drinking it the other day and I was like, no. And now I've been drinking just like one matcha every day. And before, like when I initially gave up coffee, I couldn't even do matcha. I tried, but it was a little too stimulating for me. And so I really just had to give my body a few months where I was either just doing the mud water, which has really, really low caffeine levels, or I wasn't doing anything at all. And I actually got this stress release, like herbal tea that I would make. And when I was like really wanting coffee, I was like, I would just make myself that tea so that it was something that I could sip on and it would like give my brain that ritual throughout the day because I couldn't handle having caffeine. And so I just really let my body unwind from that. And now I've noticed I'm at a really good place with it, but it was really challenging giving up coffee. And I don't know if I'll always never have it, but well, I don't know. When I go on vacation, like when I was traveling over the holidays, I had some coffee when I was back home, but I noticed that it's not something that I'm reliant on anymore. And so I think that that's very important. And even now, like sometimes I'll be like, oh, I haven't even been thinking about coffee lately, especially like this past week. Um, I mean, granted, I've been sick and everything, but even when I go to coffee shops, like usually I'll order a decaf, or honestly, my desire to go to coffee shops and get coffee has just really diminished ever since giving it up. So, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. So, that was a really big habit that I kicked in 2024 that just like wasn't serving me. And it was really my body that led me to that. And that was probably my biggest takeaway from 2024 was really looking at healing and addressing that trauma. And honestly, I'm still moving through it. It's something that I'm going to probably move through for the rest of my life, but like I'm okay, and it's really helping me understand myself and helping me feel like I can move forward. And then like getting hit with the flu or whatever it was just like, what the fuck? But honestly, I had such an amazing, just holiday season with my family. We went to New York for Christmas and my partner came with, and it was just so magical to like be with them and then to be with them again over New Year's. It just felt really, really, really important. And if there's anything that I'm really learning, it's like how important it is for me to prioritize like my family and my relationships in my life. Because prior to these past few years, I really all I prioritized was my career. And I really did not put any focus on my relationships, on my family. It really was just like all focused on my career when, I was in corporate and I was working my way up. And then also when I was really in the midst of starting my business, I really, really focused only primarily on that. That's all my energy and headspace. That's all it could go to. And so these past few years have really shifted that for me, and I really feel like I'm coming into balance between the two. And it's really interesting because looking at my astrology chart, my north and south nodes. So north node is like where you're destined to go in life. It's like purpose but beyond career. And then south node speaks to like past lives and even earlier on in this life. And so my south node is in the 10th house, which is the house of career. And then my north node is in the 4th house, which is the house of like home and family and ancestry, like soul roots. And so it's really interesting because I really do feel like I've like embodied and walked that path these past few years as I've been like, I've done a lot of ancestral healing as well. And really moving through so much. Like the shift for me has been, or the focus rather, has been so much on my family and my inner world as well. And like 2024 was like a demolition of my inner world because the 4th house is also representative of the inner world. It's like the home and family life, but it's also your inner world. So it's a really deep house. It's known as a soul house. And I was reflecting on that and I was like, wow, 2024 was like the demolition of like my entire inner world. And even spirituality, of like how I approach spirituality is like so different now. As I mentioned earlier, I'm really still learning how to approach it from the inside out, learning that like I am my guide. Like I am the one I've been waiting for. I have all the answers and they are all inside of me. And this is something that I'm still really like learning. It's still not totally easy for me. I'm not going to lie. And even one of my mentors, like she talks about discernment, which I mentioned earlier, and she's like, discernment is a skill. It's a skill. And discernment is like acting upon your intuition, but in a way that is healthy and it's like calculated, you know? And so that's something that I really want to hone for 2025. And 2025 just feels like a rebuilding of like my inner world, and my outer world is just going to come along with it. And I know that for damn sure. So, gosh, okay, what did I even just say? I said so much. So that was really just, it's crazy because, I feel like looking back on 2024, I'm like, I don't have all of these like achievements to, external achievements to showcase, but I'm so proud of myself because I feel like, you know, the work that I've done on myself, the courage to like go that deep and look at things that I like never wanted to look at. That was like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And so I'm proud of myself for that. And I think that what I'm learning is like not to place so much weight on external achievements. But, I did also recently read another interpretation around my astrology chart that really resonated with me. And again, astrology is just a tool, but if you feel guided to it, it's for a reason. So trust that. And so for me, I've been in this like ebb and flow with it where I really needed my true sky chart when I found it. And then I've kind of like pulled away from astrology altogether just as I've been like journeying into myself and learning how to trust myself. And um, I trust my intuition when it guides me back to certain aspects of my chart, my true sky chart, because at this point, I don't resonate at all with my tropical chart. I'm not saying that tropical charts are wrong because I actually don't think that they are. I just think that every person resonates with whatever chart they're meant to resonate with at that point in their life. And I've talked about that extensively and explained the difference between the two in my episode on like what is 13 sign astrology. So you can go back and check that out if you haven't already listened. And I do want to have more guests on around true sidereal. I've been calling it 13 sign astrology, but I'm going to transition into calling it what it really is true sidereal astrology. And so, I really I would like to have more guests on that work in that field as well, because I just think it's such a beautiful tool. But anyways, I read an interpretation recently from a true sidereal astrologer about my chart, and it said that with my south node, it's in the 10th house, but it's also in Taurus. And Taurus is a very, very materially focused sign. Like Taurus loves the material world. And it was like the interpretation was like, you know, you really do need to feel like you have a sense of self-sufficiency for your soul to feel nourished. And it just hit me so hard because I was like, I've been sitting here being like, why can't I just be happy and content and fulfilled with like the support that's being given to me? But I'm like, no, I do need some sort of self-sufficiency. And so that's been a really big learning process for me as well. And that's also something that I'm stepping into in 2025 is becoming self-sufficient again financially, and not pushing my partner away by any means, but just learning how to support myself in a way that is sustainable. So that was really, really resonant for me and really something that I took away recently and just made me feel really, really seen from my astrology chart. And so I think that it's just a really beautiful tool that I incorporate again as my intuition guides me there. But so I would encourage you to do the same if you feel called. If you don't feel that ping, then listen to that as well. So I'm going to leave it there for now. I hope that everyone had a beautiful new year. And if this resonated with you, please let me know. You can shoot me a DM on Instagram. You can email the show. The email is in the show notes. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here and for supporting my podcast. And I'm so excited for what's to come in 2025. So, Happy New Year.